Hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Unexpected Goals. This is your Inter versus Barcelona second leg semifinal Champions League preview. And whew, what a first leg that was! How exciting! Drama everywhere. 3-3. Everything to play for here in the second leg. So I thought here's what we do. Obviously, this is going to be both in podcast and video form. So what I'm going to do is we're just going to go through a nice little tactical review of what happened in the first leg, and then we're just going to hit on what to look out for in the second leg and how each team can potentially get through to a final here. So let's just start off right off the bat because Inter scored 30 seconds into this match, and I want to show you how it happened, essentially. And it was right out of the gates. Barcelona was pressing Inter high. You can see Inter here just fired a long ball up to Thuram, who eventually Martinez came down with it and got the ball to Thuram, who was able to play a back pass here to Barea and just free Dumfries in behind. And this type of sequence is key, and I'm going to get to it for a couple other chances later. But this freeing up Dumfries on this side to get going forward is very key for Inter going into the second leg, and it was key for them here in the first leg. Now, you'll notice that once Inter was breaking, the two most advanced players were DeMarco and Dumfries, the two fullbacks. Not the forwards, not any midfielders. No, the two fullbacks were the ones getting forward. But, Thuram ended up putting a beautiful back heel right in the back of the net, and that was Inter shocked them, 30 seconds in. But, because they went up early, you can see that they decided, okay, when you face Barcelona, you have to make a decision. Either you're going to really try and deny space through the middle and just live with what happens on the wings, or you have to be concerned with this 17-year-old kid, Lamine Yamal, who's he's pretty good at this game. So you can see here in a couple images I'll show you back to back. Inter was staying very compact because Barcelona was putting five men in the center of the pitch. So that caused a lot of problems, and obviously Inter did not want to get played through right there. So they just kind of lived with Yamal having all of this space out wide. Now, one thing I think is key to remember about why Inter is, playing so compact is not only that they have a five-man overload, but what it does for Barcelona. Thuram mentioned in a post-match interview that he said Barcelona are a nightmare to play against because you have to drop super low, and I'm going to show you the image right here where they're playing a very low block to defend against them, and it's really hard to get out of their first pressing line. And this is what I mean by it because Barcelona will consistently have five, sometimes even six guys getting into the center of the pitch and getting overloaded. It's really difficult to break from these type of positions. It's one of the downsides of playing a very low block. It's like, yes, you can keep teams out, but it's really difficult to break out of this. And, an image I want to show you based on that is in about the 30th minute, I noticed something that Hansi Flick had taken a page out of Vincent Company's book. He was having Barcelona build in a 2-4-4. I mean, Company's Bayern Munich is really the only team that I've seen have that structure throughout the season. And so essentially what that did is, Bayern was incredibly effective, and I'll get to the stats later on keep and pinning Inter in. So Hansi Flick said, all right, well, why don't we do it? And what it allowed essentially Barcelona to do is that they had this great rest defense around them. All guys were playing very centrally, so it was very easy to counterpress Inter and kind of pin them in for most of the first half. Inter got up 2-1 off a set piece because, they have a massive advantage on those. I mentioned in the preview, 58.8% aerial duel win rate in Serie A this season. That is the number one mark across Europe's top five leagues. They also have scored 14 goals. Well, now, 14 goals in Serie A off of set pieces, two in this match. So there's really nothing Barcelona can do to change that. So Inter just kind of loaded up on them, and they got paid off. Now, Barcelona equalized with just a beautiful picture of why they're so difficult to defend against, right? I got to basically, the fact that they just were, I'll get to Yamal more and when we get to the second half portion of this. But Barcelona, they can really beat you any possible way, right? They're very deadly in transition. They all have runners who can get in behind. There are teams like, Arsenal and Manchester City at times, or, teams that can't really effectively make runs in behind or really aren't well equipped to play that aggressively or want to play more conservative. Barcelona is not that way. And as you can see from the image here, Pedri just has the ball and he's given time and space because Inter's so worried about, them playing through the middle that he's able to just pick out a pass to the back post. And, Rafinha ends up coming down with it in space and just able to play a ball across the face box. And Ferran Torres just beats this guy right to the mark and it's 2-2. So I want you to remember that because that is a very important point as we get to talk about Yamal here in the second half. But Inter, their buildup was shaky throughout most of the match. But there were some good examples of when they can break out of it and it can work, how it can really effectively hurt Barcelona. And as you can see here, this type of sequence is something they do a lot. You've seen it in Serie A. I just mentioned it kind of off the top of the first goal, but this sequence of pushing your center backs up, replacing them with the midfielders who drop into the back line, and then playing essentially a bounce pass for using the striker dropping deep to free up the fullback on the opposite side. So you can see here, Bastoni was able to dribble the ball up here down the left side. He picks out Taremi, who had came on for Lautaro Martinez, who plays a quick switch ball, essentially a bounce pass, out wide to Dumfries, who eventually gets a 2v1 with Bissek, the right center back, and he's able to play him and get across, essentially across the box. It finds all the way to DeMarco, and he put it over the bar. But it was a good picture of Inter, once they get going in transition, they can pile five, six guys and really, really hurt you. So, while Barcelona was getting exposed, in transition and everything like that, and that's, a few times here and there, um, this match was the Lamine Yamal show. Like, there's just no other way to put it. And it was pretty simple. For Barcelona, like all the images I've already showed you, Barcelona, with when they overload the middle, they got Yamal into 1v1 situations a lot. And there were times where Inter would come and throughout the second half and try to double him. There was even instances where they tried to triple team him. But it didn't matter because he just kept dribbling by them over and over again. And you could see that Bastoni was in a precarious position because they were bringing Mkhitaryan over there to help out with DeMarco, but Yamal just kept beating both them. So Bastoni had to be the one that started to shade over to that side. Well, you're opening up space for Danny Olmo to have a free run, right into the right half space. And Yamal is so good at picking out people that it's very, very difficult to defend Barcelona when they have a winger like Yamal. So here's some of the stats from the match that I think are just absurd. So he dribbled by six defenders, which is crazy. He had 28. He received 28 progressive passes and 82 passes overall. He's a left winger. You would typically see those numbers from Pedri or somebody playing in the number 8 or the number 10 role. For a left winger, that's absurd. And I looked this up. Michael Olise leads Europe's top five leagues, averaging 14.7 progressive passes per 90, and Yamal just like doubled that in a single match. So that's just incredibly absurd. He also, this one is crazy, and you can I showed you I'm showing you the his epi ref stats. He had 16 touches in the penalty area. That was more than Inter had for their entire match. It's crazy. But again, even with all of that, Inter took a lead 3-2 off a set piece. It's just like they're so important, and Inter probably in the second leg is going to have to load up on them again. But then, like 2 minutes later, Rafinha just fired one home from 30. It was like 30 yards. It was an insane shot. So then it was 3-3, and Inter just kept taking advantage of Barcelona's high line, even though their Barcelona was really effective with counterpressing. Inter broke out like 3 or 4 times, and every single time it was just they were in on net. Uh, so as you can see here, uh, I mean, Barcelona is playing the extremely high line, and because the ball doesn't get closed down, Dumfries is just given a free run here. He stays on side, and he played across. He played across to Mkhitaryan, who got VAR'd off, and it was a big toe away. I'll show you the VAR here. As you can see on the far left there, that's Mkhitaryan's big toe that got called offside. It was crazy. And then, after that happened, I mean, Inter really just kind of sat in for the remainder of the second half. And even though Yamal was just going crazy out wide, I'm showing the FBref chart here. Not a lot of high quality chances from Barcelona there in the second half. So it was a crazy match. Both teams just played to their advantages. Um, so what do we look forward here to the second leg? Um, One thing I want to show you, and this is kind of just like a good like poster or like a good picture of what Hansi Flick ball is like. This is the momentum chart. Barcelona completely dominated the match in terms of momentum, possession, everything. But their one fatal flaw cost them 3 goals, or two fatal flaws, excuse me, of defending set pieces and just playing way too high of a line. And so if Barcelona is not able to close them down with the first line of pressure, then Inter's just through. And that can happen here in the second leg. You may see Barcelona completely dominate possession. You may see them pin Inter in for the first 25, 30, maybe even 35 minutes of this match. But all it takes is just one break from Inter and they're in. And that's it. So, because Inter is one of the best transition teams in the world. But again, like I said, Barcelona's counterpressing was really effective. They ended up forcing 31 danger zone losses and had 7 high turnovers in that first leg. That's a lot considering Inter had less than 30% of the ball. And I mentioned the 2-4-4. Well, Hansi Flick must have seen that Inter had 68 danger zone losses over the 2 legs with Bayern Munich. So it kind of made sense to replicate that type of formation, replicate that type of rest defense, keep everybody more central as opposed to a 3-2-5 per se, and really just try to counterpress and keep Inter pinned in, which they kind of did, honestly, for most of the match. Um, but again, once Inter's able to break out a couple times, then that's it. So what this second leg really comes down to, quite honestly, is how many times can Inter get out? How many times can they break in transition? Because, essentially the 3 or 4 times they were able to do it, they were so, so effective. Having Lautaro Martinez will obviously be important. I don't know if he's going to play in the second leg. He went off with an injury. I think it's a thigh injury in the first leg. And based on everything I've read, he may be able to make it back, but he won't be 100%. Maybe he'll be on the bench. I don't really know. So that is a massive key for Inter, no doubt. They brought on Taremi for him in the second half, which is fine, but if they need both Thuram and Martinez healthy here, and set pieces are obviously going to be key. Inter obviously scored 2 of them in the first leg, but more than that, Inter used their aerial prowess to their advantage, right? So when they played the ball long, they were consistently winning aerial duels. They were winning aerial duels on the set pieces and even defensively as well. In the match, Inter won 18 of the 23 aerial duels. That's absurd. Like, that is truly absurd. So, for Inter, they got to use their aerial prowess. They got to be physical. They got to be efficient in transition against Barcelona's high line, and they can make the Champions League final. But now the question marks are, how do they defend Barcelona? Like, what do you do? How do you actually defend it? And basically, what you have to do is you have to make a decision. What are you going to do? Are you going to make sure that Barcelona can't overload the middle of the pitch and force them to play the ball out wide and just accept that Lamine Yamal is going to be 1v1 at certain times? It's a decision you have to make. And Inzaghi chose to leave Yamal 1v1 out wide, and he had one of the best Champions League performances I've seen in a very, very long time. I've already gone through the stats, obviously, with you. Now, there were times throughout that second half, like I mentioned, that Mkhitaryan would come over and help DeMarco. There was even times where we were putting 3 guys on Lamine Yamal. And there were also times where it didn't matter how many guys you put on him. I mean, if you look at the first goal that he scored, I mean, there were five guys around him when he shot the ball. So I guess the question is if you commit two or maybe even three guys to defending Yamal, he is one of the best, creators in terms of finding his teammates. He's not just a one-trick pony of let's get shots off. I mean, you can look through his stats. He's got incredible expected assist numbers, incredible shot and goal creating action numbers. Like he's Lionel Messi. I don't really know how else to describe him. Um, but he can cause so much damage out there. And if you commit two or three guys on him, you're leaving space for all of Barcelona's other attackers. And by the way, Robert Lewandowski may be back for this match, who has generational IQ in terms of attack positioning. So I don't really know what Inter does other than just sit in, stay compact, and just live and just try to double you all and just live with whatever happens, right? I showed you the expected goal chart from FBref. Like Barcelona didn't create a shot with an XG rating over zero point 0.1 in the second half, despite all the times that Yamal got 1v1. So yeah, the highlights look flashy and they look great, and Yamal definitely was dribbling by people. But as long as Inter has aerial prowess in the box, as long as they stay compact, and as long as they keep limiting Barcelona's chances, they can keep them out and they can definitely get to the Champions League final. So I'm showing you my score probabilities on the screen here. I do have Barcelona projected as a slight favorite to go through. And it's going to be an incredible match. I'm very interested to see how effective Barcelona is in terms of their counterpressing and how many times Inter can actually break on them in transition. There's obviously some injuries to look out for here, but it should be an incredibly exciting second leg at the San Siro. Thank you all for listening and watching. I'll be back with another video slash podcast previewing the second leg of PSG versus Arsenal. You can check that out hopefully on Monday. If not, it'll be out Tuesday. So thank you everybody for watching, and I'll see you again next time.